passengers, the train arriving from the Iron Cafe is about to arrive at platform 2 in 4 minutes. Please mind the gap and the explosives that come with said train.
Get him! Get him! Doctor has become such an interesting class for me recently. Not my favorite, of course. I think I already have a favorite.
I couldn't get to her something that.
Rare high moments.
But of course, still a very fun and interesting class. Despite this, I rarely see him played. Now, most of you probably rarely even play Doctor. Or maybe you're one of the few Doctor players out there, but I get not wanting to play Doctor. Being the one being Ubered can feel a lot more fun than being the one doing the Ubering. You'd probably agree. But before we end up getting off the rails here, we should probably structure ourselves. Doctor, I think, can be put into 2 playstyles. A more passive playstyle that is the most ideal way to play Doctor, if you're mainly just trying to keep your team alive and win the game. And then a more aggressive playstyle. Not to be confused with Battle Doctor, because that's a whole different topic. And like I just said, passive is more ideal for being a team player, playing supportively, and making sure your teammates rarely end up dying. But then again, aggressive is just so much more fun. And when you get to a certain point, winning doesn't become the best part. Those rare high moments do. Now you could call this pocketing, and how pocketing is just an easy way to instantly kill everyone on the enemy team. And you're right, and I don't really care. I love chasing the high moments of TC2, and playing aggressively spits them out like a whole factory. Now maybe you could just say this is just playing with the Kritzkrieg, and that's kind of true. But at the same time, the stock minigun isn't nearly as great as the Kritzkrieg is. We'll talk more on that in a bit though. I think for this aggressive playstyle, moving quick is essential. So things like the Overdrive or Mercy Kill work great for this. Using the Overdrive as an example, with a little bit of Uber and having your melee out, you can get some real speed going, making you 25% faster than normal. And for your melee, you don't want the Super Saw. Well, at least I don't. Stock Saw is an extremely important tool to stay alive because of these stats right here. These make everybody into an HP pack. Like, literally. Not only can this HP help you get out of real bad situations like this clip, where things go bad with my Annie, and then I even drop down to 1 single HP, but get to the pack just in time to tank some more damage. It also makes winning fights more rewarding because you no longer have any lasting effects like afterburn or bleeding. Anyways, I feel it's a little weird to show you 2 play styles and only ever talk about one of them. I can't promise it'll be the most exciting, but we'll go through it quick. Passive feels more like a moving dispenser gameplay, which isn't totally a bad thing. Maybe this is your kind of mood, to just win purely by friendship and teamwork. Or you're more like me that would rather just steamroll over the enemy team. At the end of the day, it's more what style suits you. But for your own teammates, they most likely want you to play more passively, just keeping everyone alive and not at that 10-second respawn screen, which makes plenty of sense. But just don't feel like you have to be bossed around by your own team. I don't have much else to say, but this makes a good time to talk about the syringe crossbow, which I'm positive you know what that does. It makes perfect for big bursts of healing, working great for keeping everyone on your team alive at once. The perfect weapon for a passive kind of style. But the downside is you lose out on a ton of possible supercharge because you're using your syringes rather than your minigun. And of course, you can keep a good balance between what you heal with. Like, I'm sure you've heard the saying that if you run out of syringes, you're not playing good. Which I entirely agree with, unless you've just been killstreaking for a while. That's kind of it for what I have to say about the passive playstyle. It's the less fun way to play Doctor, but probably the way you'll end up winning. And since we're on the topic of weapons, why don't we talk about the not-so-mainstream Doctor weapons? Now, if we go in-depth on absolutely every item, we'll probably be here another 10 minutes. So let's do all the primaries and melees in 5 words or less. Ready? Dairy Dowser, go play flanker. Syringe SMG, nobody is scared of you. Mercy Kill, please learn how to dash correctly. Overdrive, super speed. Amputator, just use the crossbow. Dentist Delight, you'll never get 5 teeth. Pestilence Poker, you're so annoying. Super Saw, it's not worth the 25%. And yes, I'm counting 25% as one word, just with a lot of dashes. Now that that's all out of the way, we can start talking about the mediguns. You know, the part of Doctor that actually matters. Now, I see the Kritzkrieg and the Medigun as the 2 main Mediguns. Either of them could be the stock one because they both work great. Now, a bit ago, I said the stock Minigun isn't as good as the Kritzkrieg, and I still stand by that. The only real situations I ever see where stock Uber is better to have is destroying mechanic nests. And even then, a Kritz can clear the mechanics, assuming you're Ubering an explosive class. They can easily finish off the rest of the nest without being immune to all damage. Although, stock Uber does allow you to escape situations when you're all on your own, which of course, ever since crit switching was patched, which if you don't know was having your crit Uber going and then quickly swapping to your melee, retaining 1 crit hit for like a second. But since you can't do that anymore, the Kritzkrieg is worthless when you're all by yourself, as it should be. So just hope your team doesn't abandon you, I guess. Now the Rejuvenator is a pretty decent medigun for game modes like King of the Hill, because King of the Hill is usually pretty short, so Ubers aren't as important, because you can quickly switch to everyone to keep everyone's HP up. And the mirror jumping is cool, I suppose, but I don't think it's anything game-changing, really. Unless you're spawn camping or something like that, you probably won't get much use out of it. Then we have the Vaccinator, which, kind of sucks, to be honest. I don't see much of a point for it, except if there's a marksman on the enemy team that you're interested in pissing off. Besides that, it has an extremely poor overheal rate, which can be nice for building Uber, but when your Ubers already build extremely fast and aren't as important, it just becomes a great annoyance for you and your entire team. And sure, the resistance can be annoying, but if your enemy has any understanding of how the Vaccinator works, they're just gonna melee you to death. Especially Annihilators with the Tide Turner. It doesn't make any real sense to play this rather than stock or Rejuvenator, unless you just want to be annoying. Then we have the Blood Doctor, which is extremely hit or miss often. I feel it's more similar to the Vac, and why would you play this over the Kritzkrieg? Now that's not to say it's completely useless, because it's not. Like, it working in bursts is actually extremely great, because you won't end up losing all of your Uber if you waste a charge. It's also ideal to have when your team has weapons that will hurt themselves, or if you have classes like Brute that soak up a lot of damage. The Blood Doctor's obviously not completely useless, but you could just dumb it down to being a worse buff banner. It works sometimes, but I'd almost always rather run the Kritzkrieg. Well, that's all the mediguns done. With that said, let me send you off with a closing to all of this. Like I said at the start, Doctor is a really interesting class for me. And for all you people who swear by playing Doctor, I cannot figure out what keeps you playing this class for more than, like, 4 rounds. Jokes aside, Doctor is a class that needs a lot of skill from the player and your own team, which is uncommon to say the least knowing TC2 players. With such a limited supply of weapon choices, there are still a lot of ways you can take a play at our nervous British man. There's a ton of ways to approach Doctor, like playing more violently, or trying to be the best healer your team has ever seen. But I don't think any of them are wrong. As long as you are still a decent healer and know how to play, I think you'll be alright. Except for Battle Doctor, go to hell!